Jesus taught the same thing that the Buddha taught. I'm not talking about religion. I'm not talking about Christianity. I'm talking about what Jesus taught. If we look at the Sermon on the Mount, Sermon on the Plain, a block of verses right there, and compare it with Buddha's verses in the Dhammapada. Now, both Buddha and Jesus have large bodies of work. Of course, the Buddha's is huge. Jesus is very small by comparison. But both of them are based on a core teaching that is an inward-looking, heal yourself type of teaching. However, they're not in plain language. They are encrypted. When we read Buddhist stuff, we know we're supposed to figure it out, although it's kind of plain language almost. We get the Jesus stuff and people, for some reason, they suddenly stop translating, interpreting. They just read it as plain language. That's like reading The Tortoise and the Hare and saying it really happened instead of trying to interpret it. There's something in there. If you're a Christian and you read Jesus and you don't interpret those verses and you try to read them as plain language, you're standing outside the narrow gate. These interpret and they become mentally interactive steps. Each and every one of them tells us something about what to do or what our life condition is like. And what I'm going to do in this video is show a style of verse that I find it in two places, in the Dhammapada from Buddha, and then I find it in Jesus's work, but not in the Sermon on the Mount or in the Beatitudes. I find it only in Luke in the Sermon on the Plain, showing that there are variations between those. And I call Matthew, Mark, and Luke three variations of one single monomyth for different people in the population. That's why they don't exactly line up when you try to match them up. They're not the same. It's not about Jesus' story. Those are three monomyths that are not identical, but carry different things anyway. So again, we're going to find this dual verse kind of thing that we're looking at here. It's a style of verse that I'm going to talk about in this video. My name is Dan Paulson. Welcome. Let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to start by reading from the Dhammapada, Buddha's work right here, right off the bat. And let's go into verse number 1. Again, it's in a section up front of the Dhammapada, a small book. And this is in a section called Dual Verses. All that we are is the result of what we have thought. It is founded on our thoughts. It is made up of our thoughts. If a man speaks or acts with an evil thought, pain follows him as the wheel follows the foot of the ox that draws the carriage. Now, number 2, these are dual to each other. All that we are is the result of what we have thought. It is founded on our thoughts. It is made up of our thoughts. Do you see right now that so far verse number 1 and verse number 2 are identical? All that we are is the result of what we have thought. It is founded on our thoughts. It is made up of our thoughts. So that is telling us that we are products of mental experiences. That is what we are. Okay, back to number 1. If a man speaks or acts with an evil thought, pain follows him as the wheel follows the foot of the ox that draws the carriage. Now, this is one of those types of verses that I am that. I become the foot of the ox that draws the carriage. The wheel following me, pain. That is the cycle of pain following behind me. If a man speaks or acts with an evil thought. Now, this does not mean that I am an evil person or that I have done something evil or anything like that. It can be. But what this truly means at the level of mind, at the level of, I don't want to use the term soul, but at the deepest level, it is a mental experience. We have had life. Here we go. There are parallels. Evil thought, judgments. Judge not lest ye be judged. An evil thought is the same thing. It is looking at something in the physical world that has happened, classifying it as something, holding it as something, and creating a part of your mind, storage space that is holding that is now becoming a filter for your further life. It's going to continue to find ways of growing, and it's going to, and left unchecked, yeah, you see what happens? We know that. Look at your life. But this is the scary part. You have to understand that it isn't. This is tough to say. It's tough to hear. You have to understand it. We have to take responsibility for ourselves. There are things that happen that we didn't have any control over. However, they are still a part of us today based on the way we experience them, the way we classified them, and the way we continue to hold them. And they are continually in place, creating a continual reemergence of themselves through our life experiences. We're at a point where we go, okay, maybe I was hurt, maybe I was a victim, but damn it, I'm not anymore. That's the difference. We have had life experiences. We judge things and we based on those judgments and how we hold those, that continues to cycle around behind us. So that means we could hate something and we keep seeing something that causes us to remember that, or we've had something happen to us that causes us to live in shame, and we keep and we hold that, and that continues to follow us in life. That whatever is that we're holding on that is evil to our life existence. Okay, so we need to understand that in order to interact with this, we can't look at it and say, well, I'm not evil, I'm going to dismiss that verse. It is not interactive if you do that. If you look at it and go, okay, it's not about my conscious evilness, it's about what is evil to my existence. It is what has happened to me that I'm not dealing with, and it could be something that I am a victim. It is still an evil thing that I'm holding, and the pain because of that follows, like the wheel follows the ox that draws the carriage. You see that? Now, if we go to number 2, again, all that we are is the result of what we have thought. So again, we're dealing with mental processes, life experiences. How were you raised? What did you experience, and what do you feel, and how did you end up being as a result of that? It is founded on our thoughts. It is made up of our thoughts. Our life experiences is what we're living through. Now, what do we have? If a man speaks or acts with a pure thought, we clear everything out. Happiness follows him like a shadow that never leaves. Now I'm the shadow. What is it? The man. If a man speaks or acts with a pure thought, happiness follows him. So instead of having the cyclical thing happening, because we've got something negative inside, we've got a shadow happiness that emerges because there is nothing in there. But there is something else happening in the background that if we look at it carefully, why would there be a duality there? Why does it have to say that? There's something happening in the background with there being two verses there dually in duality. Okay, this is letting us know how we view life as good or bad is what we become. When something happens, there's an event, and how I classify that event is how it becomes that is creating who and what I am when I do that. So I can think something is bad, or I can think something is good. Now, when life is bad and things are not okay for me, it's because I'm holding a lot of bad judgments, the things that have happened in a bad life. Beaten, molested, told what a worthless piece of crap you are. All kinds of things happening. Runaway, hard life, divorce. So many different things happen to all of us that just make you at some point go, oh my gosh, what has happened? We have become products of our life experiences mentally. Look back on it. What has happened to us? We are now holding on to something up here that is our massive experiences. And that whether we've just judged them as good or bad is what we become. The dual verses is showing us that if you think this way, this is going to happen. If you think that way, that's going to happen. You see that duality is happening there. It's a mind process. How you come down on something. This is really bad. How do I change it? Make it so that it's not bad anymore. You might not be able to make it so that it's good. I got molested. I can't make that good. But I can make it so that it isn't bad. I need to neutralize it. I need to make it so it is no longer hurtful to me. And whatever process that takes, understanding that we're all a mass of humans trying to emerge, trying to rise up above that my situation is not unique. Only when I hold it inside of myself, when I stay afraid, I don't want out. But when I get out and get into the world, I see other people going, yeah, me too. Yeah, me too. Yeah. Yeah. And then we begin to heal when we do that. And that's what we're looking for there in the duality of the verses. It's going to go through, and there's a whole section up front. Let me just grab another one and read it. He abused me. He beat me. He defeated me. He robbed me. And those who harbor such thoughts, hatred will never cease. He abused me, he beat me, he defeated me, he robbed me. And those who do not harbor such thoughts, hatred will cease. Yeah, we can see that in action. But the dual verses are there. You can see that there's not only a teaching in there, but then there's a duality. Do this, this will happen. But if you do that, that'll happen. It's good or it's bad. Primarily before that, there is an initial point. When you have an experience and you make the decision, that's a good thing, that's a bad thing. He abused me, he didn't abuse me. I'm going to let it go, I'm not going to let it go. Whatever it is, that right there is the duality that makes the difference in our life experience. It's not the duality that happens out there. It's the duality that the mind decides the quality of that. And you determine that by what does it feel like emotionally to you? And then putting it away, storing it that way, remembering it that way, holding it that way, and going, God, this is just the way it is. That is putting it away. That's storing it. That is That is putting, actually, the skeletons in the closet. That is creating the monsters that are going to continue to grow. We just don't know that. But we've actually got direct Jesus metaphors to use. Those are what I'm planting in the garden. That actually becomes the seed of whether it becomes a flower or a fruit. What is good from the garden, what emerges from the garden emerges from a seed. This is where the cause and effect comes into play. It is a mental decision-making point where we decided the quality of something and the strength of it and stored it in our brain. And because of that, and because of the energy of it, it is continuing to be a part of our life because the way we're holding it. Okay, now, I'm going to contend we're going to find that in Jesus material, but they've obscured it. And I'm going to talk about the Bible a little bit. The Bible and what has happened to the Bible in the hands of the Romans and the Roman Catholics. It got changed up in a way. There are people that argue with this. Let me show you something right here. This is what I want to talk about. The Bible originally was all verbal, right? Long ago. People are not reading and writing. This is going word of mouth. Okay, I got this from the internet here. When the books of the Bible were originally written, they did not contain chapter or verse references. Remember, they were word of mouth. They didn't have chapters and verses. You just told the story. The Bible was divided into chapters and verses to help us find scriptures more quickly and easily. It is much easier to find John chapter 3 verse 16 than it is to find For God So Loved the World. And a few places chapter breaks are poorly placed. Yeah, look at that. And as a result, divided content that should flow together. Overall, though, the chapter and verse divisions are very helpful. I want to make sure to emphasize that is if we are talking to each other and trying to make comparisons. I need you to look at something for me in Ezekiel, something. When they were originally, as word-of-mouth stories, they wouldn't even be consolidated in a single sitting like that. You would just hear the stories individually. That's how they were originally delivered. So obviously we see that the chapters and verses are helpful in writing and studying from a distance and making comparisons. But as far as telling the story itself and just getting into it and the memorization, they don't need to be there at all. They actually can interfere. Let's get into that. The chapter divisions commonly used today were developed by Stephen Langton, an Archbishop of Canterbury. Langton put the modern chapter divisions into place in around AD 1227. The Wycliffe English Bible of 1382 was the first Bible to use this chapter pattern. Since the Wycliffe Bible, nearly all Bible translations have followed Langton's chapter divisions. Hebrews, they've done the same thing to other Bibles as well since then. Okay, so right there I can see, you see that there was something poorly placed. They said, I'm going to contend that those were not poorly placed, that they were purposefully placed. And I'm going to tell you why, because of where they are located. There are two creation stories. Do we know that? There's a 7-day creation, and then there's a 5 rivers creation, where there's the Adam and Eve story and how the 5 rivers flow out and go different places. But there's a 7-day creation that lines up with it. And right after the 7 days of creation, or after Adam and Eve naked, unashamed in the Garden of Eden, is what? First sin. So those are two separate stories. But where do they put the chapter break in? Between day 6 and day 7 of the first of the first creation story. I like to purposefully hide that. To me, once you straighten out a few things and then do a detailed analysis, what I see is two creation stories, but also there's a monomyth structure that begins when Noah is called. But you know what? Out of all the monomyths from history, this is the only place where there's two callings. Noah is called twice, and he's asked to load the boat in 2 different ways. One of the ways matches one of the creation stories, and the other way matches the other one. You can see that there were additions in, as far as I'm concerned, that they're trying to obscure. They want to hide that. You can pick it apart and see it, though. You will also notice that in many places there is a verse. It'll start sometime. Most of the time it starts at the beginning of a sentence, but oftentimes it'll start mid-sentence. That is bizarre. Say you were told to do that. And other places they're accurate. Here's the story of Babel. There's no blending there. Here's the story of Abram and Sarai. Yeah, there's no overlap there. These are accurately done, except for in places where they're trying to hide something. It disrupts the flow. It does disrupt the flow if you're reading it and not paying attention. And that is what they did in Luke. in the dual verses. Let's take a look at what there is here. These were meant to be hidden. This is what it looks like in the Bible. I will read it. Blessings and woes. Then he looked up at his disciples and said, Blessed are you who are poor, for yours is the kingdom of God. Blessed are you who are hungry now, for you will be filled. Blessed are you who weep now, for you will laugh. Blessed are you when people hate you and when they exclude you and revile you and defame you on account of the Son of Man. Rejoice on that day and leap for joy, for surely your reward is great in heaven, for that is how their ancestors treated the prophets. But woe to you who are rich, for you have received your consolation. Woe to you who are full now, for you will be hungry. Woe to you who are laughing now, for you will mourn and weep. Woe to you when all speak well of you, for that is how the ancestors treated the false prophets. So you can see that even here, the numbering, I took a couple of them out here. Well, this should be the start of one perhaps right here, 20, maybe not 21. There should be 122 here, 22, 23, 25. Yeah, you can see that it isn't consistent in the way that the numbering is even done there. But if you look here, you can see right here that I've got a blessed are you who are poor right up here, for yours is the kingdom of God. And down here it has but woe to you who are rich, for you have received your consolation. So this would serve as a dual verse. However, they just split them apart. They stacked them differently. So what I've done is I've gone down here and I see that that's what they've done. I'm beginning to restructure a little bit. I'm taking out the verses right here just for my own, just for me to look at it. And I'm seeing that these line up right here. So I eventually come down here and I restructure it all. And it sounds like this now. Blessed are you who are poor, for yours is the kingdom of God. But woe to you who are rich, for you have received your consolation. Blessed are you who are hungry now, for you will be filled. But woe to you who are full now, for you will be hungry. Blessed are you who weep now, for you will laugh. Woe to you who are laughing now, for you will mourn and weep. Blessed are you when people hate you and when they exclude you and revile you and defame you on account of the Son of Man. Rejoice on that day and leap for joy, for surely your reward is great in heaven, for that is how their ancestors treated the prophets. But woe to you when all speak well of you, for that is how their ancestors treated the false prophets. Okay, they sound radically different to me when I do that. You can see that it's a dual verse. Blessed are you who are poor, but woe to you who are rich. For yours is the kingdom of God, for you have received your consolation. Now what we have to do is interpret those verses. Those are the same thing. This is where I talk about interpretation. We can't look at those as plain language. Poor in the physical world means what? I'm struggling. I need food and clothes. But there are people that will take the same verse and go, I'm poor, so there, I'm going to heaven. So it works for some people, but it's really not what is there. What we're talking about is a spiritual thing. All of these transition into the psyche. They're not about the physical world at all. They're about us individually. This is a teaching for me. This is my guru. This is me walking up to Jesus sitting on the mount going, Master, what's the meaning of life? Where did I come from? What did I do? And he's telling me in cryptic terms that I'm supposed to figure out, except in a Buddha, do-it-yourself, self-healing genre of material. It is in a religious genre of material. So the analogous verbiage that he's using to carry the same teaching is different, but I know that it plays out in the psyche. I'm going to go with Buddha up here and say, things that are mental. I look back on my life and go, yeah, there's no doubt in my mind that if I go back and place myself and remember at various times of my life what kind of a person I was, how I felt, and what my life experience had accumulated up to at that point in time, that I was living through that and it's continued to emerge, that I can go, yep, I am a product of my judged experiences. Damn, I can see that. I can see that. So I'll just treat it that way. Now, the thing people probably dislike the most about my interpretation is that the supernatural goes away, but it's the only way I can make sense out of the material. So in this case, the kingdom of God is a representation of something that all teachings have. There's this idea that we're looking for inner peace, nirvana, a better flow in the Tao, Canaan. We've left Eden, where we were naked, unashamed, in the garden, uncovered. That was us as kids happy, not yet attached to life. We're looking for that as a destination, and the kingdom of God is analogous for the same thing. That's going to be a mental space where we are happy. And poor in spirit. What is spirit? Spirit we think of as what lives beyond. What we know is that life experiences are based in mental processes. That's where I said I'm going to go with it. And I know that my life is, and my life experiences is based in the accumulation up here, the confusion, the hurt, the things that I don't have resolved, the things that I want, the things I can't get, my needs, this confusing mass up here is what I live through. That is my spirit. And if it's poor, which means devoid of all of those things, you got a good life. When it's full of all those things, you don't. When we mourn, we are relieving ourselves of those things. So what we can see from Buddha's material right in the beginning of the teaching is that we are a product of our mental experiences, and the hurt that we hold on to keeps coming after us. And when we let go of that stuff, we've got peace. Here we have, when you don't have anything, you've got peace. You've got that devoid in spirit. So the teachings are there, and they're going to be consistent. It was many, many years ago, I thought, Jesus sounds kind of like Buddha. That whole measure you meet, that whole golden rule thing that, whatsoever ye would that men should do to you, do ye even so unto them, or however that goes. All of that sounded like karma in different terms. The more I study it, the more I realize there is only one core teaching, and they're all teaching it. And that karma, that what I was seeing right there is an incredibly core part of it. It starts right off in Genesis with the plants, the seeds growing that grow plants that produce fruit of seeds that continue, as it's beginning to generate the idea that we live as a result of cause and effect, that we are parts of cause and effect. And that's what all those teachings were covering, cause and effect. In Jesus' genre of material, the carrying case is very specifically meant to create Christianity as the carrying case. So that is why it is so big and so popular, but also why it's so confusing. But I just wanted to point out that verse style. I don't find it anywhere else. The dual verses. Here's what happens if this happens. Here's what happens if you don't. Here's what happens if it happens. Here's what happens if you don't. I find it in the Dhammapada right up front, and I find it in the Sermon on the Plain right up front in the book of Luke. If we go to the Beatitudes, and we go to the same teaching, which is in a different monomyth. Matthew is a different version of that Jesus monomyth. What we see is that blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven, devoid of things. Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be filled. So there's something going on in there. The duality is contained within the verse. It doesn't come back later and say woe to. So it's not doing the same kind of style. We can see a difference between what is in Luke and what is in Matthew because of that dual verse type of thing is not being used. Just thought it was fun. Another thing to point out, and seeing that they hit it. Instead of stacking them one on top of the other, making it obvious, it's like, well, it's kind of spread them out a little bit, put numbering in there. The Bible's a little tricky. You have to know that there is somebody in the background that knows what's going on and is trying to make it so it's not so easy to see. It's not easy to see anyway. It's there. And I think if I could suggest anything, it would be that when you're reading these, you're looking for what is similar between them, not as what is different. They don't sound the same. We absolutely start looking for similarities. Let me read from back and forth again. Blessed are you who are poor, for yours is the kingdom of God. But woe to you who are rich, for you have received your consolation. Buddha. They who imagine truth in untruth and see untruth in truth never arrive at truth, but follow vain desires. They who know truth in truth and untruth in untruth arrive at truth and follow true desires. Jesus, blessed are you who are hungry now, for you will be filled. Woe to you who are full now, for you will be hungry. Buddha, as rain breaks through an ill-thatched house, passion will break through an unreflecting mind. As rain does not break through a well-thatched house, passion will not break through a well-reflecting mind. Okay, now, admittedly, those verses don't interpret as the same thing. They don't align there. The similarities there is the this or that. It's like a teeter-totter thing, this side or that side. If it this way, then that, and if that way, then this. or else instead, or something like that. You can see that as what is going on in those verses in different styles. Then when it comes to the interpretation, it's always treating them the same way. They play out in the psyche, and they're analogous terms. They're not straight up. An ill-thatched house, that's my mind. Passion will break through an unreflecting mind. Passion. What is passion? Passion does not mean loving somebody. Passion means attached, wanting, clinging, grabbing onto life, physical life experiences. And there's nothing wrong with having fun. That's not what I mean, wanting, desiring, grasping, clinging, holding on to hurtful things that continue to cycle. It's a body of work. You can't look at a single verse and go, oh, that's what I need right there. We actually have, it's a multi-stage process. What we're seeing there is the duality, though, and that's what I would always suggest is we're looking for what is the same between teachings, not what is different between them. You know, again, like crossing a threshold, Jason going through the clashing rocks or Moses going through the Red Sea. We're not looking for what is different about those. We're looking for what is the same. Conceptually in the background, it's crossing something, going through something, barely making it. We see that element there is what is in the background. Anyway, okay, I need to end this. I'm bouncing back and forth between interpreting the verse or just pointing out that this is a style of verse that you can look at. Interpretation videos really actually require more time and attention. In this case, it was really a matter of, hey, look it, there's some dual verse stuff going on in here in one place that eventually becomes recognizable, but it's kind of hidden. It's enough to where it's kind of hard to see. So hope this was an interesting video. And if anybody else finds any verses like that anywhere, yeah, let me know. That sounds pretty fun. It's obviously a teaching, one of the styles of teaching that we're and how to deliver verses. I am that, this equates to me the cause and effect, the cyclical verses, all of them that we're finding that have different styles to them. The transitions from the past to the future, or from the physical to the mental, actually, from being attached to the world to letting go and understanding that what we have attached to, there's cause and effect. What we're seeing is effect. We have grown up attaching to effect. We are attaching to the final result of something, not realizing that. So what we're doing in this process is trying to let go of all of that. We naturally do that. We won't grow and learn unless we do that. If we continue to grow and learn, we will emerge above that. But it seems to me in cases like this, what we have is like some multi-layering going on. There's a verse that tells you that the pain is going to cycle and come after you. Then there's another one that says, however, if you get rid of the pain, happiness will not leave. And in the background of those two, it's also letting us know that there's duality there. Good, bad. However you've decided the situation, what happened to you, how did you classify it? That is what it became at that point in time. If it is bad later on today, it is because you classified it as bad. It may have been bad. It could have been bad. But it's a part of growth that we have to find a way to stop holding as bad. That is what is in the background of these teachings. It's not just, here's what happened, but there's a duality going on too. There's a split thing going on. Okay. Hope that was fun and interesting, and yeah, I'll see you in the next video.